right. Hello, everyone. As you heard, I'll start with a short introduction. As you all have heard, this session is being recorded so you will be able to revisit it. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Noah Segol. I'm the VP of Marketing at PractiTest, and today with me on this session is Joel Montvaliski, our co-founder and Chief Product Officer. And he, as he likes to say, but I'll allow him to introduce himself in a minute, a tester. So a fellow tester in that context. We are very much excited that you are joining us today for the introduction of PractiTest SmartFox AI capabilities. But as I mentioned, a lot of the people on our audience are new to PractiTest, and as such, I'm gonna take a very short few minutes, then the very next few minutes for a short introduction for those of you who are not familiar with PractiTest, to give the context of SmartFox and AI capabilities. As a housekeeping, as I mentioned, this session is being recorded. There is a Q&A. We keep it tracked, so feel free to ask questions at all time. We will grant time for questions at the end of this session, but feel free to ask questions throughout the session. We'll accumulate them, and hopefully we'll get all of them responded fully. And without further ado, let's get this party started. So as I mentioned, we are PractiTest. We are the most intelligent test management platform powered by SmartFox AI, which is the capabilities we're gonna show you today. And some of you might or might have not been to our latest event called When QA Leads. And this is essentially part of PractiTest perception that we believe that PractiTest should be used when QA matters. So what is it that we do? We are a centralized hub. We are an end-to-end QA orchestration platform, which is built for scale and designed for clarity. This means that our system has end-to-end modules all the way from requirements that can be integrated in real time for a third-party platform such as Jira, Azure DevOps, ClickUp, and many of those platforms at once, or they can be used as standalone. We have our core entities are test and test execution modules, and we have issue module when unfortunately those issues are found, and modules, the reporting and dashboards modules to visualize and communicate the value of the results that we find. About the company on its own, we are frequently listed in Gartner and Forrester reports. I'm going to show some nice reports that we conducted alongside with Forrester in the next slide, but just to mention Gartner, because as I mentioned, I'm marketing and I cannot avoid this part. I just heard earlier this week that we are part of the hype cycle for global trade finance transformation in banking for 2025. So if you are in that sector and not just, go out, check it out. So there's other, some of the analyst firms also address to our capabilities. Obviously, as we are, sorry, I haven't mentioned this yet, we are a SaaS-only solution, but as such, we adhere to the strictest security regulation. So that means that we are ISO 27001 compliant and SOC Type 2, okay, GDPR compliant, of course, and we are an AWS technology partner. So that just to put a little bit more of context. Among our customer base, you can find customers from pretty much any industry. And I can't avoid showing this slide without sharing a quick story that when I joined the company several years ago, for me, I was expecting to see just technology companies as the customers of a test management platform. But in reality today, any large company or pretty much any company is a technology company. And as such, you can see some very known brands here from the healthcare, the retail, government, financial industries, as I mentioned, from all around the globe. Okay, you can see on this slide, we have Canada, UK, US, Australia, of course, and probably many other countries in Japan that you can see. We have customers in more than 55 countries. So this is just a sample. I've mentioned in a glance the Forrester Total Economic Report that we've conducted. So Forrester have identified a 3-year ROI of implementing PractiTest of 312%, with total benefit of 2.4 million and a payback period of less than 6 months. Those are quite, I feel a little bit proud of those numbers. And I think that this is a nice justification that I know that many people are struggling with persuading management about investing in QA. Most of you are aware, have no doubt about the need to invest in QA, but sometimes you get pushback from management. So we'll be happy to share this so you can, to help you get management support. So that's a little bit about, of course, the report. And let's talk about AI, which is the reason that we all came for this session today. So, Joel, do you want to say something about Freddie?
Yeah, I'm actually excited about Friday, and as Noah was saying, you know what? I'm going to introduce myself because she didn't let me. So
Correct.
hi everyone. My name is Joel, and as Noah said, one of my roles in practice is being Chief Product Officer, which basically means that I work with the team in order to define the product and the strategy and the low level product and stuff that we're doing. And but among other things, I'm also a tester. I've been doing testing for close to 30 years. And when we started looking for a mascot for even before, if you notice the logo of practice on the top left side, it's actually a fox. And it took a while for the team to understand why the fox, and I had to work very hard on that. And people didn't realize, but talking with a lot of us testers, I think that many of us understand that we have a lot of the same attributes that we have from a fox. We're sneaky, we're smart, we're not always seen, but behind the scenes, we actually have some pretty impressive wins and stuff that we do. We're always seeking out and in the lookout, and we always, always, always find our prey. Okay, so this is important, and so we got the mascot for PractiTest some years ago with that fox in there. And when we started looking into AI, it was again, you might say it's childish, but I said that it's testish. We needed to have a mascot because AI has to be also innovative and AI has to be inviting and stuff like that. And we came up with the concept here of the fox. Now, don't tell anyone, but his name is Freddy. I'm making that official now. So it is one of my prerogatives. So I want to introduce Freddy the SmartFox AI for PractiTest. And again, we're going to start talking about the stuff that we're doing again in a more serious fashion. But we want Freddy to be that helper. Okay, we're not talking about the Clippy of Microsoft, but we are talking about that entity within your project who will come and will help you out knowing what's happening on the project and giving you hints and explanations and a lot of help throughout the whole project. So for me, it's actually pretty cool. And I'm going to let Noah continue doing the marketing stuff, and then I'll do the demo.
Okay, so as Joel introduced the mascot of SmartFox, let's talk a little bit about the vision behind SmartFox. So in many cases, AI is being used. There is a lot of buzzword in the last, I think, 6 months or so, but AI is not new. Okay, even within PractiTest, I do see some of our customer joining us today, and thank you for being with us. So even some of you might be confused because we had SmartFox as a sub feature for the past, I think, 2 years, doing some capabilities that we're going to show, or a year and a half perhaps. But the thing about SmartFox itself and PractiTest perception in general about AI, it's the fact that in many, many cases, AI has becoming very common in the context of test automation. And we think that test automation is great. It's part of testing, of the overall testing approach. But we look on the use of AI in software testing, and we want to offer something which goes above and beyond automation. Okay, what SmartFox aims to do is to provide context-aware testing intelligence. Okay, that will help you become more efficient, more focused, so you can test whatever that's actually needed to be tested, and providing value, actual value for testing, and to help you with strategy for the things that are worth tested, that are worth to be tested. Okay, so we're talking about one assistant, SmartFox, as I mentioned, but this assistant for now has 3 strategic powers. And the reason that I'm saying for now is that obviously this is just the beginning, and this is continue to be evolved. Okay, so expect more to come. But let's talk about what's already live and you can test out just as we finish this session. So one superpower of SmartFox, it's the fact that it is an efficiency guardian. Okay, the system proactively detects and prevents duplicate tests and issues, and preserving your integrity, mostly for your test library and for issue reporting. Okay, this means that you're gonna stop creating over tests that were already there and are very similar to what's there already. The second superpower is the adaptive test generator. Okay, it generates comprehensive test steps and coverage in minutes, not just in days, but it is also adaptive. You get suggestions and then you can modify, make amends, advise the system what it's missing, and only when you're satisfied, then those test steps are being inserted inside your product. And the last element and last superpower is the execution strategist, which optimizes execution based on data-driven prioritization for maximum efficiency, and important to mention, from your own project only. Okay, so this essentially, as we talked about, context-driven, this capability is building insights from your own project, okay, and it's generating insight based on data coming from your own project to help you become more efficient in your own context. We can't continue the discussion about AI without addressing a concern that it's common and is reasonable, and that's the fact that AI needs to be responsible. Okay, so as we make sure that our AI, SmartFox, and overall AI approach is responsible AI, with the focus that it's built for quality assurance team, but still making sure that, first of all, we are transparent. Okay, we clearly indicate on a product where and when AI is being used. Okay, and all interactions are logged, providing comprehensive audit trails to support compliance and governance requirements. And to answer questions that you might already have, you can opt in to use AI. Okay, it's not mandatory, but you can turn it on or off based on company policy. This is a common question that we hear from our own customer base. We know this is still a concern. We don't force people to use it. This is one, but it's very much open and aware to where it is being used. The second one is about data privacy assurance. Okay, and the next concern that we have is that we never use your data, to train external models. Okay, processes secure with your environment. Okay, and this is keeping your proprietary information secure and safe. As I mentioned, we are GDPR compliant. This is a common concern. Joel will address that later on as well. We have bias mitigation capabilities. We're monitoring to ensure that all outputs are fair and unbiased. Okay, to promote equal testing practices. So that's about bias mitigation. And last and not least, and this one is extremely important also for the hidden concern that you might have, we believe in human-centered control and the fact that AI is here. I've mentioned Gartner before. Gartner likes to talk about AI augmented, okay, and not AI replacing. You maintain full oversight. SmartFox is a suggestion mechanism, but the final decision remains within your team. We don't believe AI at this point is replacing humans in their capabilities. We still need QA teams to execute AI, to make smart leverage, to use SmartFox smartly, to leverage, to get benefit out of this. And this is an important point that we want to mention. I know I just came back from an AI conference this morning, and there is always the question of how many are worried that AI is going to replace you. So SmartFox is not here to replace you. It's here to help you do a better job and become more efficient. No, let's skip before questions. I think the next part, Joel, I'm going to hand over to you for an actual demo, because slides are nice, but I think most people would like to see it in action. You're still muted.
Yeah. Before I go over to the presentation, the demo, and for those of you who know me, you know that I like demos. I don't like presentations that much, but there is something. Wait, I'm trying to show something here. Oh, come on. There it is. I do want to put emphasis on this part, and Noah mentioned it, but you know it's extremely important for me, so I do want to drive the point home in here. As Noah mentioned, we've had AI even maybe for a number of years, and for us it was trivial in a sense because AI is a tool. AI helps you. A technological tools such as, I don't know, databases or HTML or CSS or stuff like that. It's just a means to an end. And when we started looking into AI, we did have that point of what is AI for PractiTest. And as those of you who know, or those of you who are here new, they will know that in PractiTest, we're solely focused on test management. We prefer to be extremely focused on that to provide the best value in the market for that. instead of diverting ourselves into automation and load and all the other stuff. Because you know what? At the end of the day, I have a lot of colleagues and friends who are working automation tools. They do have some pretty good solutions. There's some of them that are even free and great. And again, I'm not here to make advertisements for anyone else, but we do believe that there is a very, very big gap on the area of test management, quality assurance management. If we look later on, quality engineering management in the future, especially as we're going more and more into integrated DevOps environments and closing loop, and even if we go to Lisa Crispin and Janet Gregory holistic testing approaches, there is quite a lot of stuff that can happen in there. But there are very big challenges in there. There are challenges around the huge amounts of data that we see all the time with our customers. And again, I work every day with users and customers who have anywhere between 15,000, 50,000, and 500,000 test cases in the repositories. These are numbers you cannot actually work with. Teams that might have 30 people or 300 people, which means that there's quite a lot of coordination. And many of us who work with people who are not really trained testers. And there is quite a lot that AI can actually do in order to help out. And so if I look into the vision of PractiTest, the context-aware testing intelligence, actually what's telling us, we want to help you make more decisions to bring quality data to other people in the organization. But maybe, you know what, to squeeze that orange with the quality data better and in a faster way. If someone tells me what's the objective of the QA team, it's actually to test less, but to provide better coverage. And that is kind of the things that we're trying to do here within PractiTest. And it's important for me to make sure that people understand that it's not only about generating test cases. We do that. It's, as Noah was mentioning before, to go above and beyond, not only automation, okay, but to really, really go above and beyond into what you can actually do with the team. But enough about words and slides. Let's actually go and show the system because we're obviously proud of it. And Noah made me aware of it, but it might be that some of you or most of you or at least part of you haven't ever seen PractiTest. And if I start talking about AI in practice, yeah, I'll go and find, but what is PractiTest? So for those of you, and I see quite a lot of names of people who I work with day in, day out, sorry for that, 2 minutes. This is PractiTest. I'm actually working in our production environment, so this is all live. PractiTest is a QA management solution. Noah mentioned it. And we have modules for requirements management, and we have a test repository management and execution management in here, and even issue tracking. I'll tell you a secret. We even have project management with a nice task board in here, and obviously pretty cool dashboards. But above everything else, we are an information management system around testing. And the reason for that is simple. My personal belief and that of the team, if you run a test and no one cares about it, don't run the test, okay? So everything that we're doing has to be visualized for stakeholders, not even to our end users, but to our stakeholders. And so if you ask me, this might be the single most important module in PractiTest because it helps us to visualize stuff. So what is PractiTest? Again, we cover the whole end-to-end process, and we can import, you can create requirements in PractiTest or import them from Jira or ClickUp or other systems. And you can either create your test cases, and I'll show you how to create a cool test case with AI, or import them from other areas. And then you use those test cases in multiple test sets. And so you can trace over how the testing process is coming along and how your progress is coming along and report over that. And as you're finding bugs, they will be either reported in Jira, in practice, or both. And so we have an issue tracking module. And again, reporting dashboards and so on and so forth. So it is the whole 9 yards. And I'll be more than happy for those of you who haven't worked with it, just to try it out. We have some free trials that you can actually work with. But when we start looking into AI, and Noah was mentioning the 3 superpowers or the 3 pillars, I want to start by showing the first one. And that first pillar is that place where we want to make sure that we can help you generate better test cases from the get-go, okay? So as an introduction, I'm currently on my requirements module. These are requirements or user stories. And again, you can see some of them have weird IDs. These are coming from Jira in my case. These are native requirements or user stories that I generated in here. And by the way, coverage or traceability that we see here, that means that our requirements are going to be linked over to test cases. So here I can see all the test cases currently testing my requirements, so on and so forth. But more importantly, I can see here that I have a requirement, delete entities in my imaginary system, and it's not covered, which means I don't have test cases for it. So if I'm a tester, I get a user story. This is how the user story looks like, for example. We have the full user story here, as much data as you want to, and all sorts of attributes or fields in here. But I want to generate a test case based on that. So in PractiTest today, we're allowing you to do that very, very quickly. I can actually go over to my traceability where I see the linked test cases, and I can tell the system to generate a new test with steps with the help of AI. That is what the stars in here actually tell you. And the moment that I do that, if you notice, the system went from my requirements module to my test library module. And you can see that this is a new test with the name that came over from the requirement or from the user story that I had in there. We also copied all the information from that user story into our test as test description, and any information or data that might have come over from the requirements that we can duplicate or bring over as part of the information in here. I know from my requirement that this is a database server test and a schema test of that, so everything is in there. But behind the scenes, as I have been explaining, the system also went along, and with the information that I already provided, it started creating the steps for that. Again, this is a scripted test. Scripted test means that we have steps for that. And you can see that these are delete entities, and I have here all the different acceptance criteria and stuff that I have in here. So for everything in my description, the system using an LLM integration, it generated the steps in here. But, and this is the big part in here. As Noah was mentioning, we work very closely with Gartner and Forrester and consultants of the sort. And it's very clear to everyone, I was very happy that they were mentioning that. AI systems today are advanced, but they're not perfect. So I'm going to tell you upfront, 90% chances or more, then the steps that I have in here are a good start, but they're not exactly what I wanted to have in mind. I might want to add more steps, reduce the number of steps, add other scenarios, stuff like that. It might not be perfect. That's just the nature of the beast. Just as, for example, if I'm working with ChatGPT to create an email or a presentation, I'm going to have an interaction with that model in order to generate the best presentation or image or whatever that we have in there. The same we have within PractiTest. You can see here that we have the step generator model. If I press in here, I'm going to see the actual steps that were generated by my AI. You can see here, step generator, generate or refine steps using the AI. And here I have the input with which I can actually talk with my AI model. And for example, I was looking into this, and for one reason or another, maybe it was not in the description, I don't have here any steps for localization testing, and I need to test localize with Japanese, for example, or stuff like that. So I can type in here, please add to the steps, above, localization testing for Japanese and Spanish. I'm a recovering Costa Rican, so I like Spanish. And then I tell the system to go ahead and work with that. Now the system will analyze the information that it already had, will add all the stuff that you have in here. By the way, I can tell it to make more steps or less steps. I even saw one of our customers was using it to translate the whole test into Spanish if you want. So everything you can actually put in here and have that dialogue with the system. The moment that it's done, the system will regenerate the steps accordingly. And again, just continue working with it as much as you want in order to generate the stuff that you have in there. At this point, it also added here my localization steps. And again, I can continue going back and forth. See if I don't like what it has in here, I can go to the previous version, stuff like that. The moment that I'm done generating my test, the test is as I want it to be. I just apply the steps, and I will have here my new test case that was just created. Okay, so this is the first thing. We want to help you to generate better tests. Who is this for? Some people think that this is for junior testers. I think that even senior testers might get advantages of this, especially as your user stories become bigger and larger and more convoluted, then it will make sure that everything is actually being covered. Obviously, if you have non-tester people working, it will help, but it's more about making sure that you get a head start on how you're going to be able to work with that. By the way, we are already releasing the ability of continuing to work with the step generator on existing test cases. That's also coming in the coming weeks or so. Okay, so this is the first feature that we had in here. I can also tell that in the future we will generate test sets and stuff like that. So this is only the beginning of how we're working in here. Now let's talk about the second feature that we were actually talking before. And the second feature, the second pillar in PractiTest, actually it's not around generating test cases. It is about working with your testing repository. Okay. Oh, by the way, I see that there's a question in here from Peter. The question is, can you use the prompt to add step parameters to the generated steps? Okay. Thanks, Peter. Let me first of all explain what was just asked. Um, as I was mentioning, PractiTest is a very mature product and we have more advanced functionality. Part of that is the ability when you're working within your steps, what we call step parameters. That means that instead of having here any hard-coded information, I don't know if I had a website or something like that, then I can just add here a parameter that will be then defined in runtime, and it makes your test cases a lot more reusable if you want, more modular or reusable. At this point, the step generator doesn't allow to add parameters. You can add them after the fact, and again, they will apply because once you have the steps, then it applies, but it's not going to happen automatically. Okay, so about that, and again, this is more from the power user perspective. You can use it with parameters, but it won't introduce parameters from the get-go. Okay, cool feature, and we already started thinking about that as well. We also started thinking about reusing other test cases within test cases. That is another feature that is called a test, but I'm not going to go into that at this point. Okay. But going back to what I started saying, one of the biggest challenges that a lot of organizations have, and I'm pretty sure that many people in the call already have it as well, is as your project evolves, as you're working 6 months, 12 months, 2 years within your project, a lot of time happens that people start generating more and more test cases. And it's the nature of the beast, it's the nature of what we're doing, that I might get a new user story and I started writing a test case without really thinking or even noticing that there were similar test cases already created before. And so your testing repository starts being less than lean, to call it in a sense, or having a lot of duplicated test cases. Okay. So that is so much an issue that we actually started looking into how can we help you with that. Okay. So if you notice in here, whenever I'm going to go into one of our test cases, see that here at the bottom, you will have a section called similar tests. If I press here on the similar tests, oh, sorry, this one doesn't have it in here. Let's actually go to one of my other test cases, even to the one that I just created. If I press similar tests, then the system will fetch over any either 1, 2, 3, or 7 test cases that the same system PractiTest considered has overlap, or it might be a potential duplicate test case, where the idea here is that as I'm writing my test case, I might be, again, without saving it or after saving it, I will get a notification from the system saying, hey, you know what, this test that you just created, it's about deleting entities. You may want to check another test that is called project definitions. Makes sense, right? Both of them are working on entities, where you will see that there are matches or duplications found on the title of the test, on the description of the test, even on the steps within the test in here. So the idea is for the system to not only point to those test cases that, again, let's call them potentially duplicate test cases, but trying to give you ideas of where these duplications are so that, again, if possible, reuse an existing test, improve an existing test instead of generating a new test in here. You have it already, again, as you are creating the test, or you have it already for existing test cases. And this is what we're trying to do in order to not only save you the time from rewriting the test, but to make sure that your repositories can be as slim as possible. And so, for example, we're already starting to work on features that not only can I go into a test case and find the similar test, but we want to generate kind of a report that will show you, oh, these group of test cases might have too many similarities or may have an overlap, trying to give you pointers into where can you make your testing repository slimmer or better. Again, these are things that are coming in the near future. By the way, the same implementation of finding a similar test, we also have it on issues. And on issues, some people are even happier than that, because whenever I go into a bug that I have in the system, imagine you found the bug, you start to write the bug, you look into the similar issues, and you will see all the bugs that might be a duplicate bug. So instead of generating a new bug, it's even better to go to an existing bug and just out this test result. Let's also link it into that bug, and we'll give it a little bit more strength because the same scenario or the same bug is affecting multiple scenarios in here. So do notice that. The algorithms are smart in the sense that it's not a word by word count. We have um, means using AI in order to define which terms are stronger than other terms, and so generating more similarity algorithms based on that. Okay, so again, this is a pretty cool feature, and this is a very useful feature at that. Okay, now with everything that we've been talking about, and again, it's critical functionality. On purpose, maybe I left. Oh, there's a question in here again. There's a question. I will leave that towards
Maybe leave that to
the end.
the questions part in a minute.
Yeah. The last feature that I want to show today, and again, we're working on more and more functionality as we speak. It is, in my opinion, the strongest feature with regards to how much it can actually help you as part of your project. And this is a feature called the value score. And I want to introduce the value score because even though it's not very complicated, it is a very interesting feature to have in here. So if you notice, I have here a repository, and I'm working within my test cases, and each one of my test cases in here has a number assigned to it. And you can see it here, but this is actually the value score that you have in here. What is the value score? The value score is a way of PractiTest to analyze your execution history, the history of your updates in the test cases, all sorts of different attributes that we actually got to them by analyzing tens of millions of runs in the system and trying to understand what makes a test more valuable or less valuable in the context of your project. So how does it work? It's actually simple, but it's actually pretty smart. Let's assume for a second that you only have two test cases, no other test case in your repository. One of your test cases during the last 10 runs found, let's say, 7 bugs. The other test found 0 bugs. If you could only run one test on the current sprint, chances are you would select the one that has been finding bugs lately. Why? Because historically speaking, holistically speaking, it's giving you more value. Okay, it might be because it's testing better areas or more risky areas or whatever reasons they are. On an holistic level, it's giving you more value. That is one attribute. Which test is finding more bugs than the other? Let me give you another example. You have one test that during the last number of runs, all the time it was passing. You have another test that sometimes it passes, sometimes it fails as you found the bug, sometimes it passes. Again, it starts failing because you find other bugs. Which is providing you more value? Which is more interesting? Obviously, the one that has variance in it. Okay, so it will have a higher value score than the one that is currently passing. By the way, interesting enough, when we look into the data, also if you have a test that is all the time failing, it will mean that you don't really care about the results because you're not resolving them. So if you have one test that is failing all the time versus one test that is failing and passing all the time, the one that has variance actually is the one that has more value. And like this, we have a number of other attributes that we found. For example, how many times the test was run, how many people run the same test, when was the test last updated, how many steps it has, not too much, not too many, not too little. We found again some attributes that are pointing towards more value, and this is what we're using for the value score. Where does machine learning and AI come into play? Every project is different, but every project has a context. So we use AI and machine learning to analyze which of these attributes have a higher context or higher index context within your project, which ones have a lower index context. And so if you have even the same two test cases with similar run histories, some of them will have different value scores in your project. Now, this is the value score. It's not a passing grade. Above 40 is not good and below 40 is not right. Imagine more as a normalization Gaussian way of looking at it, where I can tell you that if I compare this test and this test, the higher one has a higher value. If I compare this test and this test, the higher one has a higher value. The 0 in here means that I don't have enough information in order to give you an idea of what the value I can provide you with that. But how does AI work in here? It will give you an additional way of understanding again, if you have a limited time to run, which test cases are more valuable for you. So you should give them maybe a higher chance of running. This is not the single reason why to run a test. Obviously, as testing professionals, we might say that even though this test has a lower value, the functionality that I'm testing is this directly related to this one. So I will choose to run it regardless, but maybe I will run this one with this one and this one in here. Okay, but it is a way of analyzing everything that is happening in your project live and giving you that idea of which test cases are more valuable or less valuable. By the way, we've seen people also using the value score in interesting ways. For example, I was working with one of our beta customers who said that they started using the value score in between sprints. And so they look into test cases with the lower value scores to understand if they're still relevant enough and maybe retire them or stuff like that. But the idea is to give you more visibility into what your test case are actually doing for you in here. So again, this was the last specific feature that I wanted to show today. Do notice that we're working a lot on how can we help you generate better test cases, how can we help you to generate better test sets. We're working on a feature that hopefully in the future will go into your test set, understand which test cases you have in here and say, hey, you know what, when you run these 3 test cases, maybe you want to add these other 2 test cases because they give you a good results with that, and maybe remove this test in here because it's not valuable enough for what you're doing. We want to work on functionality that will look into requirements and tell you if they're complete enough or not. Quite of stuff that we want to add in the future in order to give you more information out of the data that you have in here. And again, this is only the beginning. Our roadmap is filled with ideas, and we will continue working with that. So we have 10 more minutes for the session. So I think that now it's a good enough time to actually move over and move forward and start looking into the questions that we have and maybe start answering them.
Absolutely. Okay. So we had a question about, first of all, about the similar test feature of AI. If you could, if you can explain further, if you can further explain about how AI is being used to identify matches in a similar task, and specifically, if are the matches determined based on plain text similarity, or they take into account functionality described within the test cases? We'll talk about the similar test feature.
Yeah. The way that it works, it's a little bit complicated, but I'm going to try to explain it. We look into the information on the test cases. At this point, it's not the context of what they're testing, because you know what, I'm going to take that back. There are a couple of things that we do. First of all, we analyze the test, and maybe this is a bad example. Let's go to one that actually has more data in it, maybe the one that we have in here. So we look, for example, into all the text that we have in here, and we understand which words are stronger, which ones have a bigger meaning in the context of what we have in here. For example, we might understand that permissions in here, roles and permissions, actually has a bigger value than obviously the or users, that are words that actually happen quite a lot in the system, or deletion will have a higher value than system because system is widely used. So we know how to give different sets of values to the different words in the system. And then we try to look for similarities in other areas, not on the, again, the simple words like the or versus or stuff like that, but the more singular words that we have in here. So it's kind of a smart algorithm to try to, first of all, fetch the main idea of what you have in here, and then look for similarities into that. Okay, so it's kind of a combination of both. We're also working on a way that will not only look into the words, but in the meaning of the words. So for example, if you write role one time and permissions the other time, it will understand this is a similar issue. This one's actually coming later in the year. It's more about not only the word, but the meaning behind the words, using LLM algorithms for that. But it's kind of smart in the sense that it doesn't go plain text by plain text. Okay, it's not a Google search for that. It's more about the meaning of what we have in there. So
we have 2 follow-up questions about the similar test before we move to the other question regarding other part. One is about whether similar test feature works within one project or across multiple projects.
One project, and that's on purpose at this point. Remember that when we look into PractiTest, we are very careful about data guarding your project. Okay, if you're in PractiTest, maybe you didn't think about this. that I might belong to one project and not to another project. And if I'm only one project, that I only want to see data on that project. So we're very careful what data we share, at least automatically between projects. We have plenty of cloning test cases, stuff like that. But at this point, the similar test will work only within the project that you are. Okay. So it's going to be single in here. We might in the future look into going deeper than that, but at this point, it was the conscious decision to work only in the context of what project, if only because we need to safeguard the data privacy and not share data between projects, at least not without giving you the ability of understanding that beforehand.
The next question is about the next step following identifying similar tests. And the question goes, is there a method to consolidate or eliminate redundant test cases that are identifying during detection without compromising traceability? This is
this one will happen later on. First of all, I think that we will do that in stages. The way that I'm envisioning the roadmap is, first of all, to try to generate kind of a heat map around your testing repository if you can. So if I have all my test cases in here and I want to generate a similarity based on components, for example, a field that I have in here, I want to generate a heat map that will show you, oh, you know what, for component application server, you have quite a lot of similar test cases. For component client side, you don't have quite a lot of overlap. So at least I will tell you first and foremost that there are specific areas, and then the test cases themselves, that they have that overlap, I want to call it, not so much similarities, because usually we're talking here about overlaps. That's the first stage. The second stage will be if we can suggest to you how to merge those test cases. If you think about it, merging test cases, that the user was smart enough to ask about traceability, going to requirements, but you need to think forwards. Maybe we have two test cases that are linked to two separate test sets because I have multiple instances for that. So when we start thinking about merging entities in PractiTest, we need to understand how do we merge the backwards traceability and the forwards traceability for that, going all the way to issues as well. We are starting to think about that. At the beginning, it will be everything manual. We might give you some hints, but we're moving towards that direction. But if you ask me, the first thing that we will do is to kind of give you a more graphical approach or model. How can you visualize those areas where, no, you were saying it during the introduction, we work a lot with the term over coverage and under coverage to emphasize the fact that the nature of testing is that some areas will have too much overlap between manual and automatic and different sections, where some areas will have bigger, let's say, blind spots. So first of all, we want to work visually. How can we help you towards that? Then we will work into automated algorithms for merging, let's say, different artifacts. Not necessarily, by the way, not necessarily only test cases. You might want to have similar requirements, similar issues. How do we merge those as well? Okay, but yes, that's again ideas that we have for the future.
Okay, thank you. And we have a question regarding the value score, and that's about its availability. Can they start using it?
Okay, so the value score has been an on and off romance within PractiTest. Again, it's a very cool feature. I love it. I personally love it. We've had some hiccups on the way because it is a very tricky feature to develop, which it's good because I don't foresee many of our competitors actually getting to that level of cadence. It should be out and fully available to the public within the coming days. And once we do, I guess we'll have a notification about it, and you will be able to activate it. Okay. If you want to go, once you have it in there, you will go over to your project settings and activate the value score in here, but it will be available in the coming days for everyone to work with. Do take a couple of things into account because again, we have experience in the past. In order for the value score to give you a good and accurate result, it depends on the number of runs you have. Above 3 to 4 runs, you will start seeing values in here, but above 7 to 10 runs, you start seeing more accurate values in here. Okay, obviously, the more runs you have, the better we can calculate the vectors of the angle of the vectors if you know enough about AI in order to give you a better value score for that. Okay.
Thank you, Joel. I think we're going to pass for this point for question to expect people time because we're close. We're 1 minute on our time.
Yep.
As you said, for tester, that means that we're already late. Before we wrap up and thank everyone, I do want to invite everyone to take a look and try it out themselves. Okay, as Joel said, it's fine that I started with slides, but we are a product company. You can, if each and every one of you, we invite you to come to our website. Okay, after we're done with the questions, you can try it for free. Obviously, we have a free trial. If you prefer speaking with one of our team, you can easily, whenever you go to our website, there is an early access. You can go, click either on a free trial or on a talk to us. Okay, reach out to our team. So we're very much looking forward to you doing that. You can find more information on our website in case you will visit it. And that would be all for today. I want to thank Joel for being with us. Thank you all for attending. If you have any questions, you can see that we have a support chat here. Our team is always here to answer any question at all time, and we look forward to you trying our product and joining us. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Again, looking forward to talking to you in the future. Bye-bye, everyone.